Do not be afraid of adjustable rate mortgages. There's nothing to be afraid of. There's a lot of homeowners that are getting a home loan that are afraid of getting an ARM or an adjustable rate mortgage. I can tell you that especially with rising interest rate environment, an adjustable rate mortgage is a great solution, but there are a lot of things to consider of that adjustable rate mortgage. Number one, just because it's a 5-1 ARM or a 7-1 ARM or a 10-1 ARM does not necessarily mean you're gonna get better pricing than a 30-year fixed. Let's talk about what an ARM is, adjustable rate mortgage. A 5-1 adjustable rate mortgage means this, that your rate is fixed for 5 years. So let's say today's world, you can get a 6.5% on a 5-1 ARM. That means that your rate is fixed at 6.5% for a period of 5 years. After that 5 years, your rate can adjust. And it's the same thing with a 7-1 ARM and a 10-1 ARM. All the first number means is that's how long that interest rate is fixed before it can adjust on you. Now the caps on the adjustment can vary. Some of them might have a 1-year cap, meaning it can adjust 1 point for 1 year. Some of them, they may be able to adjust 2 points, a maximum of 2 points for a period of 2 years or 3 years. It really depends on the program itself. But the first number is what's important because that tells you exactly how long that interest rate is fixed. Now, we say, okay, why does that matter against a 30-year fixed? Well, it matters against a 30-year fixed, especially in this market because rates have skyrocketed and people are trying to save as much money as possible within their mortgage payment, like always. And so the 30-year fixed, for example, is pricing at 7.25%, and you can get a 5-1 ARM at 6.5%, well, for 5 years, you're saving 0.75 or 75 basis points on your mortgage. 5 years is 60 months. So 60 months, if you can save 150 bucks, it's a lot of money. It's over $10,000 cash in your pocket. That's net savings, okay? But what happens in 5 years when my rate adjusts? Well, that is going to happen. So what you have to ask yourself, one, am I gonna be in the home longer than 5 years? And if so, maybe you look at a 7-1 ARM or a 10-1 ARM. But the real challenge is, I'm gonna need to refinance this home if I stay put here, most likely because my rate's going to adjust. Now, the rate could adjust up, it could also adjust down too. But if you think that in 5 years, and no one can predict this, so you gotta gamble with it. But if you think rates are gonna go up after 5 years and you're at 6.5% and you're afraid of that your rate may go to 7.5%, 8.5%, 9.5%, which most of the time it won't, then you do a 30-year fix. But the reality is this, that usually doesn't happen. And that's why the ARM products are amazing. Now, ARM products typically have higher qualifications, so you gotta have a better debt to income ratio, typically a better credit score, most of the time. But the ARMs are great because here's the reality. If you lock into, say, a 7-1 ARM today, and let's say it's at 6.75%, and you're faced with a 30-year fix at 7.25%, you may say, well, saving 80 bucks a month isn't really worth it to me. I'd rather guarantee my payment doesn't change. Maybe it's 100 bucks a month difference. The reality is, in 7 years, that's a long time. And if rates tick back down, which in a 7-year period they probably will, you can just refinance your 7-1 ARM into another 7-1 ARM. So as an example, let's say today you do a 7-1 ARM, which means that my 6.75 interest rate is locked for 7 years. If 3 years from now, rates go down and you refinance on another 7-1 ARM, and now your rate's 6% instead of 6.75, you're locked at 6% for another 7 years. And so because there's caps to these ARMs, it usually is never a devastating factor to a change in your rate versus the savings that you save by not going with the 30-year fixed. An ARM is typically the best way to go in a rising interest rate environment, and even in a low interest rate environment, because we always refi or we sell. Most people sell their home every 7 years. And so instead of maybe risking a 3-year ARM or a 5-year ARM, look at a 7, look at a 10. Now, the only time we say, is it worth going on the 30-year, is if the yield on the 30-year fixed is very close to or the same as that ARM. That makes no sense. So for example, if the 7-1 ARM is at 6.75 and the 30-year fixed is at 6.875, probably worth doing the 30-year fixed. It's the gap of 50 basis points plus where it's typically never worth it. And to me, if I'm you, and you're considering getting a mortgage, check that 50 basis point gap. That to me is the breaking point of saying, I'm going with the ARM because I can save 0.5% for the period of time that I'm locked in this loan. And then if rates tick down, you refinance on to another ARM program. Keep in mind, it's easier to qualify for a 30-year fixed than it is for a 3, 5, 7, or a 10-1 ARM. Okay? Those are usually the numbers that you see. But if you can qualify for an ARM, you have to look at it as an option in this market, and you always have to look at it as an option. I have a 10-1 ARM on all of my houses, and I did a 10-1 ARM because the pricing versus the 30 was significantly less, but I wanted a little bit more spread in case I stay put for a while. But I was saving, I don't know, at the time I was saving about 75 basis points on it. So it really is up to you, and also it depends on if it's a jumbo or a conventional. So a jumbo ARM actually may price better than a conventional ARM. And this goes back to one golden rule. There are so many different products out there. There are so many ways to slice and dice a mortgage. You need to talk to an expert. You need to talk to a loan officer and go over the products. But you as a consumer should know your options, because if you're just getting hit and pitched with a 30-year fix because that's what you think you should get, you may be missing out. And shame on your loan officer if they don't come up with a variety of products for you, 2 or 3 options. If I do a 5-1 ARM, if I do a 7-1 ARM, and if I do a 30-year fixed. That's always the 3 programs that you should get quoted. And sometimes you might want to look at the interest only. The interest only typically has a little bit of a hit to the interest rate, but the payment's going to be significantly less. So there's a lot of options out there. Make sure you talk to a licensed mortgage professional. They are the ones that'll guide you with the right information. For more financial information on the housing market, be sure to click and subscribe, as we always come out with some great, fresh new content for everybody. Thank you.